We have a new sponsor of ROAS. You Are Not Your ROAS is happy to welcome our primary sponsor, retention.com. If you love money, you're going to love retention.com. You'll hear more about them later in a bit. Until then, enjoy this episode of You're Not Your ROAS exclusively on the Triple Whale Network.
When I get to that edge of like, this is too much for me to handle, I'm not going to make it. And I remember that this universe came from nothing, is going into nothing. I'm a blip, like not even a speck. I'm a mist passing through momentarily. I am so small, and then I go. So like, I just don't need to take it that seriously.
All right, folks, welcome back to another episode of You Are Not Your ROAS. When I saw this one on the calendar, I've been hunting this guy down for months, maybe even over a year. He is one of my content muses. I actually got to meet him. I have a really good vibe check, and I got to meet him. We met, I think, almost over a year ago. He was in Austin. We ended up bumping up against each other at a conference, and I just knew this was a friend for life. This guy has a brain and a heart bigger than anything I can think of, and just an incredibly talented content marketer, just marketer in general. Welcome to the show, Aaron. How are you, my friend?
Well, I'm doing great now.
Oh, and I forgot to plug the best looking guy in SEO.
Yeah.
How did I bury the lead?
Let's get on to that one. Yeah, that'll be the Easter egg. We'll drop in. Yes.
Unbelievable. Yeah,
Verified. Verified.
Go Google it, people. This is not me being laudatory. This is the real deal here.
That's right. No, talking about vibe check and connecting, I think that was a Pep Lajaw's event.
Yep.
Oh, man, what was so fun about that, and now here is, right, like, I finally just get to embrace my full-throated love of you and yours, because we're no longer, like, quasi-competitors.
Yeah.
We'll dig into that a little bit, but now I have had, like, I couldn't even help myself. I broke the rules back in the day watching what you've been up to of like, I think we should track this down. I've got a tweet out there somewhere that literally lists out all the ways Triple Whale is better than me at marketing. And this is like, so you talking, big head, big heart. I don't know, like big brain is what you said. I say big head. Man, it's actually, it's really a delight. So we can talk about some of that stuff as well today, because that was just basically my attempt to be like, I got so much jealousy and envy that what the hell am I going to do with it except just put it out there and be like, this is what it is. This is why they're better than me. So delighted to be here with someone of your caliber.
Oh, look at that dirty pool gassing me up. So I'm going to be soft on you in the rapid fire. Oh man, this guy knows. He's ready for it. So for people that don't know you, who live under a rock in marketing or whatever, how did you even get into the marketing game? Kind of give me the too long didn't read of the evolution of Aaron, if you will.
Yeah. So Aaron didn't grow up in a religious home, but he had what at the time he would have described as a conversion experience, which is a word I'll use throughout the time together today. When he was about 18, 19 years old, got an undergraduate degree in English, enlisted in the military, got deployed a couple of times, and on one of those deployments, one of those deployments, I was in the Middle East, no place too scary, but I was in the Middle East post September 11th, because I'm old, I'm 40 years old.
Yeah,
I'm old, people.
Same.
Still good looking, but old.
Let's go. Old but spry.
I was on a deployment in the Middle East, and I just happened into some books on like real meaty old school theology, and it lit me up. And that whole like big brain thing, it just fed into exactly that kind of, it spoke my language with that old school, hard thinking, philosophical, theological, exegetical, hermeneutical. We could really get on it. So I went to seminary in a previous life. I have what's called a Master's of Divinity. Did you know this about me?
I did. I actually had to look up the hermeneutics. Is that what it's called? I had to look that up.
Hermeneutics, yeah.
I was like, wow, this is cool. Yeah, because it says I do a little brief on all of the people that come on the show, and I didn't know the deployment. She missed that, so I got to get on my assistant for that. But I did have say it one more time.
Hermeneutics.
Yeah.
So I have a master's in divinity with an emphasis in hermeneutics, which basically means that it's a fancy word for an interpretation of texts.
Yep.
How to read and understand words. But if they call it hermeneutics, they get you to pay a lot more money for it, right? And then I also have an emphasis in homiletics, which is another fancy word for speaking. So I thought that was our Aaron Orendorff's life. Went to seminary. I was working here in the Portland area where I still live at a multi-site campus church, teaching on Sunday mornings, Wednesday afternoons, evenings, that sort of stuff. I was like deep in it. And then my life imploded about 12, 13 years ago. Continued to go downhill for another 2.5 years, and then absolutely flatlined a decade ago. Literally a decade ago this February, which also overlaps with, this will give you an idea of everything that went down, also a decade of continuous sobriety for myself. So that gives you like a little hint.
Yeah.
Did a very successful job of burning down that previous life and found myself unemployed and unemployable. At the time, Southern Oregon, middle of nowhere, Klamath Falls was called. So I threw up a website. I knew I could write. I knew good writing covered a multitude of sins. I bet I could write and communicate better than a lot of people who were trying to sell things online in various forms. And I made a big bet. Started teaching at the local community college as well at the same time, where I taught a little bit of writing.
Let's go.
Yeah. And so those two sort of new career trajectories both took off at the same time. And the marketing stuff really amped up over the first 2-3 years. I wrote like a madman.
Yep.
For those first 2 through like a madman, because I had no credentials, no clients. And the whole idea was, how do I fake my way into getting people to give me that money to write for them? And so what I did was I wrote complete full articles that I would reverse engineer for places like Forbes, Business Insider, Fast Company, like just a who's who on the marquee side of things. And then I also wrote, this is how I got connected with Pep back in the day. I wrote for Conversion XL, Content Marketing Institute, Copy, Blogger, like all the niche, Unbounce. And it opened doors that I had no business walking through, because I would reverse engineer what's popular, how does this work, what's the word count, how do they use images, and then I would just hand over these full articles cold, going into all of these publishers, and I'd be like, here, I wrote this for you. Interlinks to all of their popular articles as well. And if that didn't work, I would just change the interlinks and a little bit of the structure, send it off to the next one, And I did that for the first 2 to 3 years, and that's how Aaron Orendorff, the marketer, was born.
That is a crazy story, dude. I didn't know about that arc at all. Yeah. It's so interesting, dude. This is one of my favorite parts of the podcast is when I talk to all these successful people, you a lot of times build it up in your head, right? Of like, oh, they had it easy, or like this, that, and the other. And like, of course they're so good because they were lucky, blah, blah. And then 9 times out of 10, you hear this just like, absolutely, I don't want to say horror story, but almost like the Joseph Campbell, like hero's journey almost, right? Like a lot of these people had to go dark into the depths to actually find the light. It's so fascinating.
Call it a horror story. For me, no, that absolutely, listen, man, when I launched my website, I was living in a room I rented from a dude off Craigslist.
I've done the same, to be fair.
Like, dude, like that's like, I went from home, family, like, dude, it's just all, I smile about it now. And maybe that's like a good thing, is some of the distance and the time and healing wounds, and just like, what else are you going to do except like, yeah, it was dark as hell, but it was in a lot of ways. I think that's, I don't know, call this lesson number 1. The key to success is ignorance and desperation. And what I mean by that is I didn't know how hard it should actually be. So ignorance helps a lot when you don't know what you don't know, and so you're willing to just do things. And desperation. So during that time, I don't frequent this too much anymore, but what I used to tell myself every time I'd send off something to a new publisher or to a new client, and I knew I had no business in either realm, I'd literally mumble under my breath before I hit send, "Let's get rejected." That was my jam, where that desperation was just like, I'm going to make getting a no the goal, and if I hardwire rig my brain and my heart in those directions, then I win no matter what. Because like, let's get rejected. Let's just go get rejected. Ignorance and desperation can get you a long way in life.
Yeah, they say, what is that? Necessity is the mother of all invention type of stuff, where, and I would call ignorance can sometimes be a pejorative, and I know you're not using it in that sense, but I would almost call it like a naivete of just like, you don't know the odds against you. And you see that through line in almost all of entrepreneurship, because
yes,
usually entrepreneurs are very intellectually, vivid, like they're there, but there's this one part of their brain that doesn't want to acknowledge reality, and it can't, because if it did, the overwhelming, like it's like buying a lottery ticket. And if you buy that lottery ticket with the expectation of something, it's just not there. Like you have to almost will this thing into existence. But what's crazy, have you read the Alchemist, Paulo Coelho?
Oh, so as a book lover, I have not, and I've lied and faked that I have. Dude, I'm just gonna tell you the truth. I'm gonna try to tell you the truth this whole time. I haven't.
So, anyways, the too long didn't read that. It's a fantastic book. It's like this. I don't want to call it self-help, because that's almost like is denigrating the actual work of art that it is. But it's this really cool journey, and the point I'm getting to is because I had similar kind of ebbs and flows in my career where I was, one of the things about dark places, and obviously you don't want to go through that, but it really shows you who you are. And then there's also kind of this floor, right? Where it's just like, hey man, if I can get through that, like getting an article in Forbes, who gives a like I can do. So I had my girlfriend at the time had cancer. My dad had cancer. My mom just died. And I was working at a job that I absolutely hated, like all within a span of like 3 to 6 months. And it was like, real talk. Like I was crying like almost and I'm not a crier. And it was like literally just absolute implosion of my life. And then you choose, right? Like, is this going to be me, or am I going to figure out, a better pathway forward for this life? Because without getting too philosophical and religious, man, I'm doing 75 hard right now. So part of that is reading books, and I'm getting back to, I used to be really into meditation. I'm starting to get back into that. It's kind of that Buddhist bent. And like, the more you can allow gratitude to pervade your life and just penetrate every aspect of it, you realize, especially like in the Western world, right? Like if you're born in the States or the Western Europe, you're like leaps and bounds ahead of everybody already. And so anyways, the too long didn't read about the Paulo Coelho stuff was, there's a line in there that when you actually go for, and I'm paraphrasing, but like when you actually go for something and commit to something wholeheartedly, where it's like, I'm burning the ships, I'm either making it inland or I'm going out on my shield, the universe starts to conspire with you. And things, when you start living your truth, and again, this sounds hippy-dippy and stuff, so you have to, we'll get into really fun tactical stuff, but when you start living your truth, the universe, like everything starts to become easier. And I don't know if it's actually easier, but equipping yourself with that mindset, like the universe conspires to help you achieve that goal.
And see, and I'll take anything. So I mentioned, right, didn't grow up religious, had what I use that phrase, what I would have called at the time, a conversion experience. And I'm no longer a part of organized religion. So that's like, I'm sort of like this, but it's the mental framework that I've got. It's definitely part and parcel of my fabric now. It's so built in. But the truth is, I will take anything that helps me be right-sized and not take myself too seriously. So what you're describing right there, we call it the universe. I talked to a really good friend of mine who he and I came up together over the last decade, like really close dude, going through some stuff as well. I shared with him what I'm going through, like literally right now. There's always stuff going on.
There's always stuff.
And the way he described it is, he was like, where I find my solace is in absolute nihilism. I was like, what do you mean? He's like, when I get to that edge of like, this is too much for me to handle, I'm not going to make it. And I remember that this universe came from nothing, is going into nothing. I'm a blip, like not even a speck. I'm a mist passing through momentarily. I am so small. And then I go, so like, I just don't need to take it that seriously. And it hit me in that moment about how that's that gift of like having yourself connect to something way bigger than you, is no matter what we call it or dress it up as. And I would still dress it up as God, even though I'm not part of organized religion. It's that it shrinks me back to a place where like, I am not the center of this universe, because when I am, I'm like, it's like that fucking title of this podcast, right? I am my success. I am the numbers. I am so tied and so driven to my work that when that stuff doesn't do what I want it to do, sleepless nights, upset stomach, doubting my freaking existence. And the challenge is to go back to those times where you were exposed to something that was far realer than that, what you just described, and then just chill the out.
Yep.
It's like, you're so right. Gratitude in all of that. I didn't expect to have this conversation. This is fantastic.
It's great. I'm all fired up. I hope everybody else is listening. It's not too deep in the weeds, but I think it's important because there's a couple, like, I think your environment is everything. And so when I changed what I wanted in my life and where I wanted to go, candidly, I had to cut some people out of my life that were, not that they weren't good people, but you have to find the people that, for me, it's, if you're not making me money, you're not making me laugh, or I'm not learning something from you. It's like, man, I don't know. Those are the kind of people I want in my life. And once I started doing that, there was just things that happened where my dad had a old saying, and it sounded stupid when I was a kid, but then you realize sometimes how wise your parents can be. And he said, if you have cows, hang out with people that have cows because you'll never forget to feed them. I never kind of really understood what that meant. And then as I grow a little older and older, I was like, oh, I get it. Because when these people have the same priorities as you, not only do you, I don't know if you've had that before, but as you start to attain some success with kind of your older peer group hasn't, because I grew up in the Midwest. So, there's just a different level of ambition. And again, not a judgment, just is what it was. You can kind of sometimes come across braggadocious, where it's like, oh, look at what I'm doing, when it's not that. You're just trying to share experiences with your friends. And so I think really understanding that your environment is everything. And the other thing that I've uncovered when I talk to really successful people, it's not like these people are incredibly disciplined. What they did was, I believe people are a path of least resistance kind of creature. And what they did was they made the thing that they wanted to accomplish be the easiest decision in the decision set. And so it wasn't like they were this crazy disciplinarian. It was just that they had built a routine and a lifestyle and feedback loops that could then support their goals to become a better human every day. I think that, and I know I'm rambling here, so I want to get your thoughts, but the idea of success for me, what really changed was consistency. Like you were saying, just showing up right, like sharpening the sword every day. Because if not, you get to a place of like, again, that kind of nihilistic viewpoint of nothing matters, blah, blah, blah. Everything matters. Like we're on this glorious earth. It's this crazy miracle. We have this piece of glass that's a half-inch thick that can communicate with the world. Like the way DoorDash is on your phone, like you have more meal options than every medieval king. I mean, and so I think, anyway, the gratitude is the path for me. It really can help. And the other thing that I'll say is, to your point of like, when I get stressed out, I have a little stoic. I'm a big stoic guy, and it's not important, it's not forever, and it's not personal. And when something really annoys me, I'll just repeat that to myself over and over and over again. And it kind of brings me back to your point of like, we're on this pale blue dot, man. Let's get every minute out of every day. And at most, at least try and be present as much as possible. Cause that's the biggest regret I have in my tenure at CMO was that I didn't enjoy it. Like I did so many cool things, and I was always living in the future, always chasing growth, always what's the next thing. And I didn't really stop to see the mile markers and enjoy the view. And not that you can stay there forever, but I think it's really important that when you are building something really incredible, that every now and then you have a check-in of like, hey man, this is really awesome what we're doing here. Like, let's cherish this.
Big idea number 2. Big idea number 1 is desperation and ignorance. Big idea number 2, consistency is a superpower. What you just said about that, dude, live by it. One foot in front of the next. Stumbling, shuffling, limping, however you need to do it. One foot in front of the next. What is the next right thing? The smallest next right thing I can do? Miracles are born when you walk that path. That is, and it's so easy to see the big things that other people share and the milestones, because you're just getting a snippet or a glance into it. And it just comes down to, what is the next thing on my to-do list that really matters that I can make an impact in, personal and professional. Because if all you do, dear listener, if all you do is show up having done the thing you said you were going to do when you said you were going to do it, listen, you beat 95 to 99% of everybody else who's competing with you out there. Because it's so rare that people do that. It's so unbelievably rare.
Focus and consistency, I would say those are the two things that will really, really just expedite anything that you're trying to do. And I also say too, because I totally agree with you. I'm not religious either. I used to be a huge atheist, and I've swung back to more spirituality. We won't have to get into stuff, but I have my own qualms with organized religion. But I actually think religion is beautiful, and I think there's just so much wisdom in a lot of those frameworks. And really, the big three are kind of the same story, just different versions of that story.
Well, I'll tell you. So for me, the beautiful overlap between my two worlds, the two worlds of Orendorff, like seminary, military on this one end, huge cliff, everything falls apart, marketer in the second act, who knows I'm going to be for my third act, is what united those two was while I was in those religious circles, I was really, really, really fortunate to get connected to people for whom the goal wasn't to rally the base or preach to the choir.
Yes.
It was to communicate in order to affect change, which is a massive difference. Whether you're thinking about politically, religiously, or even in sales and marketing, it's if your goal is to affect change with your words, then that means you have to crawl inside the mind and heart of your audience. And you don't create desires. What you do is you attach the thing that you're trying to sell, the thing you're trying to get them to say yes to the desires, the fears, the needs, the hopes, the wants, the story that they already inhabit. And you're not asking them to come over to your side. Your job is to go out there and get inside what they already want and say, I can articulate that really clearly. And in a way that the way I like to think about it is the very first line in anything I ever write, the entire goal of it is to get the nod.
Yep.
And the nod means it's one of two things, either the nod or the hard stop. And the nod is, it's just a simple opening line that is slip and slide, easy to consume. And all they do is go, yeah. Right? So like, for example, on our new homepage, I love this. It's, you know how you suspect you're overpaying for SMS marketing, you don't really trust the results?
Yep.
And every time I betted that with somebody, they're like, yeah.
Yep.
You haven't convinced me of anything, but I got the nod.
Yep.
Like, yeah, that is the state I'm living in, right? And so it's the nod, or it's the hard stop where you say something so provocative and so outlandish that the person either wants to fight you or hug you. And that's
I love that.
Yeah.
That's a really interesting framework. Do you ever combine the nod and the hard stop?
I try to do it. No, I almost always defer to the nod because I'm also just not that provocative of a guy.
Right.
But the person I would see this do constantly, and the reason I loved working at Common Thread Collective, we got to get into like sort of the, where I've been. But is Taylor Holiday is so effing good at the hard stop. 100%. And you're smiling already, right? Like this is, 100%. If you don't follow Taylor, like go, that dude is so fire when it comes to, and I think that's like 95% of his approach to social media is let's just make people mad and then actually talk to him in the comments.
It's 100%.
That's where I learned the most of like, he just comes off with like, never turn off an ad.
Yeah.
And you're like, what? That's absolute bull. What? It's like, no, never turn off an ad. And then you got to fight him and like come to a different sort of conclusion, right? Yep. Yeah.
Taylor's probably the greatest representation of this, where it's almost like, and again, like I love Taylor, I think he's brilliant, but it's almost just like an intellectual like inch above like it's just like he's so good at it. Like and to be fair, like I haven't actually had like really personal deep conversations with Taylor. We've connected on back channels, but not at like a depth that we have and stuff like that. But I would say that I do think that is one of his not only superpowers, but also when you have that, sometimes walk like a duck, talk like a duck, sound like a duck, it's a duck. and Taylor will have this like huge contrarian take, and he can sometimes, in my opinion, like make things overly complex where sometimes things are just simple. Like, and it's a hard story to sell people. But I love Taylor, and that's such a perfect description of him. The hard stop, that he is the king of the hard stop. That's a really cool framework. I've never heard that before.
It's really helpful, and it gets me to where it makes for simple openers that they appear so much. There's so much weight being carried by that headline into first line into second line. Because I'm a writer, so I've got a hammer, I'm a carpenter, everything's a nail sort of thing. I'm a words dude at the end of the day. But it's the same thing for ads, for emails, subject line into first line, into preview text, into for landers, etc. All those pieces are, you're walking somebody through that journey. And that's where that overlap, you know, the idea of crawling inside their mind and forcing yourself to articulate their position better than they can, and then reattaching what they think they want to a new object. But it's the same desire. You're not creating desire, you're channeling it.
I totally love that. I almost have, like, as you described that, like a mental model of these people are on kind of the idea train, right? And they're consuming stuff. And if you can get ahead of them, build some tracks, but then you can build a little switcher, and then you can, instead of going left and then they get on your track, and they can go right, and then they end up in your area where you're, because you're right, there's a certain aspect of, you come across judgmental, condescending, etc. You can't. There's a line where it's like, I can't hear you over your yelling. Like you can't. People don't listen when you're yelling, kind of stuff. And so being able to empathize with them, connect with them, understand, to your point, fears, anxieties. Like, why are you feeling this way? What are the things that are driving those feelings? And then if you can mash it up and wrap it in a narrative, because that's the other thing that I think. One of the kind of hills I'll die on is I think people experience the world in stories. Yes. And then the corollary to that is I don't think people have any kind of countermeasures to an incredibly compelling story, whether it's true or not. And that's why I think where religion gets into a really incredible place of like that story is just so compelling. And to your point, if you can sprinkle in and lean on some of their already core beliefs or et cetera, where you're not going against their kind of internal beliefs, if you will, it gets into some really interesting places. But with that being said, you know, with great, with great responsibility, or with great power comes great responsibility kind of stuff, where at the end of the day, like, marketing is, you know, for lack of a better term, a manipulation of someone. However, for me, the distinction there is, are you giving them value? Are you making their life better? Having consumed this piece of content or having bought this product? And then it doesn't get as weird for me, because it's like, hey, you're helping this person. But yeah, man, that's a really, what a crazy journey. Okay, so you get through the darkness, you start slanging articles, and then how did you land your gig at Shopee's?
Yes, it was actually through writing for Conversion XL. CXL now, where Pep used to be. Yeah, it's the wildest. I used to use this old SaaS tool that no longer exists, where I could enter a URL into it. It would scrape all of the names and connect them to a Twitter account. And it was about 75% hit rate. And then I'd load that up into something like Buffer, and I would drip out every 2 hours at so-and-so. I included you in blank. Here's a link. Can you make sure I quoted you right, or something like that? And so it would look like it was an at, and it was an at, so it wasn't public. It felt personal. And I didn't even know who this guy Tommy Walker was. Turns out Tommy Walker was previously the editor-in-chief at Conversion XL, and he'd really built it up with Pep. And he built it up to such a point that he ended up being the first marketing hire for Shopify Plus. That was right after Shopify was about to IPO. They had graduated from a whiteboard of how do we not lose our biggest clients to an actual CRM. And they hired Tommy to launch the site. So Tommy sort of amassed this small little mini army of writers. It was a random SaaS-based tweet that I didn't even know this dude. He wrote back to it, and we met the next week. He brought me in as a freelancer. Then Shopify Plus hired Hannah Abaza as their director of marketing, and I was the third hire for full time there. And again, this is one of those pieces of like consistency. I don't know how many of those those goofy auto tweets I sent out. I 100, 200,
That's brilliant.
300 over whatever period of time I was doing that. One of them hit, got me in the room with Tommy, and that's how I ended up Shopify Plus. Shopify Plus, had I joined Shopify Core, I could have been a lowly blogger and ground out my time for years. But because Shopify Plus was just getting off the ground and I was the third hire there, by the time we all got together, there was like 4 or 5 people in the room for the marketing ops site.
Wow.
And by the time I left 4 years later, it was like 30, 35, 40, I don't know how many people they have now. But I was just there at the right time. Tommy ended up leaving about 6 months into my full-time tenure there. They had nobody to run the trains. So I was like, I can schedule things. I can assign stuff to writers. I can edit. So I just stepped into doing that. And I became editor-in-chief, started leading all written content at Shopify Plus. I laugh about it because I often will say I'm not an e-commerce marketer, but I play one on the internet. And that's sort of a pejorative way to undercut and protect myself against imposter syndrome in case anybody calls me on anything, for sure. That's part of what's going on there. But it's also, man, I got this opportunity to have a front row seat and really get to spend time with these large growing businesses for those 3.5, 4 years and be responsible for a lot of things that, again, I had no business being responsible for.
What a crazy cool story. And I love that too, because it kind of comes back to your desperation, where there is kind of like a hunted hunter mindset. And the hunter is awesome, but the thing about the hunter and the hunted is like the hunted only has to be wrong once. And the hunter can be, gets multiple chances. And so I love that desperation, because the prey, you're always trying to not die, but you only need to hit once, you know what I'm saying? And like all those tweets, it didn't matter the volume, because all you needed to do was one to land. And then that one lands, and it lands at Shopify Plus. And then you end up moving into editor-in-chief. I mean, that's the old Jobs quote. You can't connect the dots backward or forward. You can only connect them backward. Like, what a crazy ascension.
That's why I say one foot in front of the next right thing. And I also really identified with make that thing easy. So like, for example, finding this tool is, now the risky thing in all of that was like, there were times when it was embarrassing to put stuff out and have no one respond, right? That's the trick and that's what I think holds a lot of people back too, is just that fear of, man, it's a grind to get started. And it's even a grind to keep going often, where stuff's just not always going to hit. And you just got to be okay and have that thick skin and not take yourself so seriously that it doesn't have to. Consistency is what matters.
Totally agree with you. And again, I think it's wrapping back to your second axiom of ignorance, where it's like, let's just go, man. Don't take yourself too seriously. Blast things out. And I think that's what's also really important when you think of, especially when you're just getting started, of more of like leading indicators or leading goals versus lagging goals. Because the lagging goals, like, I want to get a job at Shopify Plus, or I want to do all this stuff, where it's like, okay, but like, that's the same thing as like, I don't want to be rich. I want to be rich. Okay, don't be poor. It's not like really, like, it's not advice, but having the idea of, okay, cool, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to write content. I'm going to surface this content to players in the space, and I'm going to keep doing that until something breaks through. I love that, man. What a crazy story.
Here's the wild part. This is so great. When I was coming up, I loved Buffer, especially Kevin Lee.
Oh, me too. Yeah.
Oh, like he was just like that one of the houses that blogs built was Buffer. They're phenomenal at their content. I applied 4 or 5 times to work at Buffer. I got rejected every single time during that come up, right? And the great irony of that is, like, if I'd ever got accepted there to work full time, I never would have ended up at Shopify Plus, which opened the door to an amazing amount of consulting gigs and credibility in the industry that honed me also, too. It gave me that front row seat to really get in the guts and behind the scenes with these businesses that were on the cusp or they just broken through. A lot of the relationships that were established, I still lean on today. That's what led me over to Common Thread Collective to, again, get fucking honed. You talk about getting honed, getting sharpened, getting beat up, and getting better. Like, that was just that was like Harvard level graduate school kind of stuff, working there for 2.5 years. But none of that would have happened if I got the thing I wanted. If I'd got the thing I wanted any one of those 4 or 5 times instead of getting rejected, I wouldn't have got the thing that led to where we are today.
Man, life is beautiful. That is what a fun. May we live in interesting times. Okay, crushed it for the big beast up north for the shoppies, and then how did you get to CTC? How did you get to Common Thread?
Oh, so they came into my DMs with all the force and fervor that you would imagine Taylor comes into someone's DM with. I connected with him and another wonderful gentleman named Andrew Ferris.
I love Andrew.
They both, and they handed over this piece of content they had written on Black Friday. And it was so head and shoulders above anything else I'd seen before from partners, because I would get pitched from partners all the time since I held the sort of keys to getting published on Shopify Plus. And a lot of the, what are we going to include in our emails sort of things. And it was just almost absolute all garbage. Thinly veiled sales pitches. And this was, holy crap, this is a framework. This is creative thinking. This has illustrations to go with it. And I wrote them back trying to sort of not show, like, play my card of like, yeah, I'll take it. Like, can I have this? I will go. And like, I was just like, let's do it. Right. So I connected with them while I was still at Shopify Plus. And then when I left, went back out into consulting at the end of 2019. They picked me up to do, ironically, a bunch of Black Friday content on their site.
Full circle.
And then by the time 2020 hit, I'd been convinced to shut down my own thing, Iconic Content, like turn it off and all in as VP of marketing at Common Thread Collective. So I started there in February, March of 2020 full time. And then of course that was talk about a wild time.
Yeah.
A month later, COVID, the world shuts down, super uncertainty in e-commerce, and then up into the right.
Yeah. Absolutely rocket ship. Holy smokes, Sam. I love this. Okay, let's wrap up the main segment. What is the nicest thing someone has done for you?
What is the nicest thing? Man, now that I'm on this, one of the hardest things I went through when I was at Common Thread Collective was, I've always been a very analytical person. You could probably tell that if you've been exposed to anything I write. I love data. I'm the same way when it comes to marketing itself internally. And so I'd had our Google Analytics channels locked down, channels matching segments, matching goals. We were operating inside of HubSpot. So after the first 6 months, I thought, I've got this lockdown. I can track MQLs. I can track where they're coming from. All right. And then Taylor rolled out this thing called the agency growth model. And it was based off of Lightspeed's e-commerce growth model. And those two things eventually became this full-blown growth map that they still use. It's integrated into Statless, and they still use it for their larger growth team clients. Really advanced stuff. And I wandered into this thing over like a weekend. I'd gotten assigned to fill it out for an offsite. And I put it off, weekend before I fly down to California. I finally go in to look at it. And I was immediately exposed to how little visibility I actually had into our marketing efforts.
That
I couldn't tell you service by service, right? We only sold 5 things. You could buy growth team, media buying, email, SMS, or creative. And I couldn't tell you what people were coming in asking for or what they bought from a marketing perspective. I couldn't tell you the volume. I couldn't tell you how soon it went from MQL to SQL to active deal to closed won or closed lost. It was just this brutal experience over about a 24 to 48 hour period getting ready to go down for this offsite where I was radically exposed to how little I knew about something I thought I knew a lot about. And I remember showing up down there that Monday, and Taylor didn't judge me. He didn't throw salt in the wounds. It was just this like, okay, well, how do we figure this out together?
That's beautiful.
And I couldn't imagine, like, I was vice president of marketing, right? This is like, that's what I'm supposed to do. And I thought I was really good at it. And the nicest thing he did is he did it. This is it. He didn't lower the bar.
Love that.
But he also didn't condemn me for not being able to hit it. It was like, how do we get you to the place you need to be? That is the nicest. Now, there's other nice things in my personal life that other people have done. Yes. But from a professional perspective, that's where it jumped in. And that was like for me, that was not only an experience that shaped me at Common Thread Collective and really taught me so much about marketing itself, it also shaped me as how do I want to interact and have the people on my team experience me. To not lower the bar and yet not condemn someone, it's such a wild razor's edge to try to walk. And it's so rare and hard.
Retention.com is not only just sponsoring You're Not Your ROAS, Retention.com is here to help you make more monies from your email campaigns. They're an amazing resource for marketers, and you can see all their podcasts and resources right on their site, including the 5 fundamental flows you need to grow. Go check it out at Retention.com or in the link below. Now back to the show. Yes. I empathize with the complexities of services funnels. It's a really interesting time. That was one of the challenges that I had at Triple, was being able to, especially too, because starting early on, like your data is not in the best place, but trying to wrap narratives around what's going on top of what attribution model do you want to look at, on top of what do you weight? Is it the person that gets the person to the party? Is that touch point really valuable? Is it the person that kicks them into the pool and they start giving you money? Is that touch point valuable? Is the podcast, the newsletter, the content that people are reading really valuable? Like, being able to get visibility into that was, or I think is the hardest challenge as a marketing leader, where at the end of the day, for me, I think of marketing, especially when you're in a leadership role, as an allocation of capital. Like, how efficiently and effectively can I deploy this marketing spend to drive towards our business goals? And it's a quagmire. It is very challenging. I've talked to bigger CMOs as well, and for lack of a better description, it's more about getting better narratives and stories than it is actually trying to, intertwine the data, because there's a lot of fuckery. It's very challenging. Like, it's a very convoluted funnel.
And I think it's like, I often think that the job of a marketing leader, just like the job of any leader, is to know just enough about everything underneath your purview.
Yes.
Underneath your scope of responsibilities, to be able to call bullshit.
Yes.
And then if it's not, let the people do what they do.
Yep.
And it's those two things of, like, I've gotten bit before by not knowing enough or paying close enough attention enough, especially with some paid media stuff that I've overseen before, where it was like absolute dumpster fire of a Google Ads account. Yeah. And I was sleeping on it for like 2-3 months, and then coming in and realizing, holy, this is this is hot flaming garbage.
Yep.
So you get woken up to that. But if you just know enough to call, and then if it's not, let them do what they're doing, right?
Totally.
Because it's one of those pieces of, like, a rising tide lifts all ships.
Yes.
And so you've got to balance the, hey, let's try to get as accurate as we can on the measuring side, and then make bets and just go and put stuff out, and don't let this piece keep you from just freaking doing stuff over here.
That's my love language. That's the one thing I think, not only in D2C, but also sometimes in B2B, where if you're succeeding, don't stop the success just because you don't know why you're succeeding. Not to say that you shouldn't try and build higher resolution or more visibility into the system and understand why you're succeeding. But I see so many people all the time where it's like, oh, well, we're succeeding, but we don't know why. So we need to stop this and then figure out how we can succeed. I actually just had this tweet out where, and this is super oversimplified, but again, I think the two roles of a marketing leader / VP, CMO, whatever, is either getting momentum or keeping momentum. And then the second part is, again, that deployment of capital, which serves that either gaining momentum or keeping momentum. And I think that like dichotomy is really the value add of a marketing leader, of like, how can I keep people either using my product or in their headspace? Like, for us, it's more about not only being in that decision set, but being the first decision in that decision set. With D2C, it's a little bit different because it's a much more linear conversion path. It's almost like easy mode, right? Like you go to B2B SaaS, it's like triple extra hard mode.
Now the thing with that is, it's always greener.
Yes.
On the other side of the fence.
Fair play.
Like, oh my gosh, if I had a funnel that someone converted, like, oh, holy crap. The clarity of that. Now I know that's super, It is. It's always green on the other side, but I'm convinced
it's
so much easier to measure.
I am too. I don't think there's the difficulty is probably the same, but the measurement is just, you can grab way more insight. It's just, there's just a different world, but I love that, man. I love that. All right. You have a master content brain. You've been deep in the weeds. You cut your teeth at Shopify. You cut your teeth at C2C. Now you're at Recart. How do you think of content? How do you think of customer retention? Let's peek into that big brain.
I think of content in 3 stages. And especially when I came into Recart, the idea was we have to set a foundation.
Yep.
It's built primarily
and for people don't know, give us the elevator pitch for Recart.
Recart is an SMS platform for Shopify businesses built to cost less, sell more, and drive real growth.
That's heat. That's good. That's polished.
Yeah.
That landed.
In fact,
that landed.
we've engineered
That's
efficiency at our core through 5 features no other SMS tool offers. And I can tell you those too.
Well,
and here's the thing. This is fun.
Let's go.
The only reason I know that is because of what I'm about to talk you through. The only reason I can say that. Because I couldn't have said that 2 months ago, even though I've been at Recart since about October, November of last year.
I tried to get you.
So I think about this in setting a foundation is we've got to, number one, decide what we're selling and who we're selling it to.
Love that.
And so our first go at that was we're selling to people who aren't using SMS yet.
Ooh, I like that.
Because the data behind it, what we did is scraping through a bunch of different aggregators to find out who's got it enabled. And it's shocking, still not a majority, even among top 75,000 Shopify stores or 50,000 Shopify stores. It's going up and up and up at a pretty good clip. But when I first hit the shores of Recart, it was a wide open green field of about 15 to 18% of the top 75,000 Shopify stores, meaning they're viable businesses that can afford us, weren't using SMS. So we built everything at that first layer as an educational play.
Love that.
From the homepage to going into the content we created, the SMS guides, going to campaigns, go into automations, go into statistics, go into examples. We just laid this foundation of what are the bases that we need to cover. And I think about that through a keyword-driven perspective where I'm trying to balance 2 things. On the one side, monthly keyword search volume, so I can get top of the funnel organic traffic. And then the other is what are the opportunities that have really low or non-existent search volume, but high cost per click. And that's because
interesting. I never added that on.
Yeah,
cost
most
per click
organizations
is smart.
Bifurcate, they separate, and this is just as true in D2C as it is B2B. They bifurcate the organic brand building side of things, and you've got a whole team that's creating content to do that in various forms. Native social in the case of D2C, a lot more than organic search, but you've got like one arm that's doing the brand stuff, that's doing the community stuff, that's doing the organic stuff, and you've got another arm that's doing all the paid stuff, the performance stuff. And because those two don't communicate with each other very well, nobody's behind the scenes of thinking about everyone's bidding on this particular keyword phrase. Nobody's building really good organic content for it. I bet we can take that over.
Really?
If
That's
all we do.
brilliant.
Because they're just not. So I'll actually build content around keywords that have no search volume, but have ads that are displayed page after page after page, or have a registered and high cost per click that's like $5, $10, or greater than $15. Then I know money, right? So we set that foundation. That's the first layer to get it. The second then is basically like middle of the funnel. Okay, let's build out our mainstay nurture sequences for people that come in but don't show intent, to try to get them to show intent. Let's build out the folks that show intent, primarily to get them into the room, because right now Recart doesn't have a self-service option. So it's got to, just like the time at Shopify Plus, it's get them into a room, get them into a room, get them into the room. That's like middle of the funnel activity. And then basically the hone tip of the spear then is getting really clear about content and sales enablement and making sure those two are married the same way that organic and paid are married. So that's what I've really been up to in the first quarter, because Q4, set the foundation, make the announcements, work the connections I've got. That was a lot of what went down. And then this quarter has been all about that tip of the spear, like getting into the sales decks.
Yep.
And the sequences, not just the email series, but the sequences that are sent, and creating templates for the sales folks to use and the BDR folks to use, and making sure these are really coming together with that same, what are the core features? How do we differentiate? What makes our strategy different? Those sort of pieces, using that language that our ICP, our ideal customer persona, is using to describe their challenges.
That's wonderful, man. I mean, that is as big brain as you get. I think there's so much wisdom there in those two marriages, with the paid and the, because I think one of the challenges, and this is usually a function of leadership, unfortunately, but one of the challenges, everybody wants to modularize marketing. You're in this silo, you're in this silo, you're in this silo. And I think that's a terrible way to think of it. I think of it more of like an ecosystem. And when you think of like an ecosystem, it's bananas that algae feeds the biggest mammal on the planet, the blue whale. And no pun intended, or shout out triple whale. But these things need to work in this cohesive ecosystem. And if one thing in that ecosystem is broken, the whole thing falls over. Another way to think of it is like a car, right? Like if you have this super crazy sports car, but one of the tires is flat, it doesn't matter how big your engine is. It doesn't matter how amazing the transmission is. It matters the product. Like everything needs to be working in this unison, in this kind of symbiotic manner. And I think the more you can bridge those or make those linkages like you did at the foundational level and at the top level, everything just works better. Going back to your rising tide kind of thing, it's like once you get, like for the D2C equivalent, like once you get a really strong organic presence, whether that be content or whether that be a great social presence or whatever, everything just goes up. Like it's kind of the same thing as like having a great email or SMS, right? It's like once you nail those, like everything goes up. Paid looks better, traffic, like everything looks better. And it's not because of one or the other, but to me, it's because of that linkage across the ecosystem, that everything is starting to become this beautiful interdependence, and it's driving you towards those goals. Again, really hard to do, especially as you get into a more complex company where you have to really get people to buy into the dream. And again, this is kind of coming down from leadership, but you get fiefdoms, and then these fiefdoms, you get politics, yada, yada, yada. But in your position, it's great because not only are you driving the boat, but you have some awesome leadership at Recart that trust you and like, hey, I'm not going to tell you how. Like, I think one of the worst things you can do as a leader is not only tell someone what you need, but tell them how to do it. Like for lower skill people, they need more direction. That's totally fine. But when you're dealing with crushers and killers, whether it be your lieutenants or other fellow generals, like don't tell them how to do it. Just tell them what you need. The how to do it's what the money's for. That's why you're paying these people. You know what I'm saying?
You put that on a bumper sticker. That is right? Good. That's a good line. Have you used that before?
I don't know. I go to it every now and then, but that's what the money's for, right? Like, why are you paying me then?
How to do it is what the money's for. That's dope, dude. I'm stealing that. I'll quote you the first 3 times I use it, and then it's mine.
Done. I'll take a 3 quote by it. But yeah, so I don't know. I just think that the way you're systemically linking everything is going to just really reap rewards, because not only that, there's a certain aspect too of, and I don't know if you've ever had this experience, but there's like all these incredible like brand touch points. And then there's like a couple stragglers. And this is kind of like the stopping in your track kind of thing that you're talking about, but not in a good way. You're like, wow, what's happening here? Like you hit that kind of like, you got outside the golden path and you're like, oh, this is weird. And that, you know, depending on how much brand equity you built up with that consumer, can be a big turnoff where it's like they don't have their crap together.
It really, especially rubber meets the road when that person gets into the room with whoever the representative is.
100%.
Yes. I mean, I could see it on your face when I just said it. And and so to have everyone, or even to have a disconnect where you can have a place where it's really the sales arm that is outperforming the marketing arm.
Yep.
And marketing's just out there sort of doing that, just pure organic. They don't have an eye to pay. They don't have an eye to how this differentiates. They don't have an eye to, it can happen in either direction. It honestly can. And then that disconnect, it's really painful.
No, I love that. Man, it's such a brilliant way to think of it. How do you guys think of customer retention and how, like, who's responsible for it?
Customer retention is owned by our head of customer success, wonderful woman named Alice. She's from Voyage previously, another SMS provider. So she's got her cadre of customer success managers. And Recart does it a bit different because we are really, for our scale plan accounts, which is basically paying over $1,000 per month, which is basically everyone of any size who's sending SMS. I didn't realize how high the floor was when I heard SMS before I got there. Yeah. What they're typically doing is managing the day-to-day campaigns via the customer's marketing calendar. So it's on them to be proactive and either fill in the blanks when they've got a campaign, a launch, a promotion, an event, a drop, etc., to have it ready, get it approved kind of thing, or to actually find the opportunities where nothing's being planned currently and proactively, again, just recommend what's going to go out.
Oh, wow.
And so what it really comes down to is the ability to show, on the one hand, that positive customer experience of they're on it, they're getting to me, they work well with my existing agency, they work well with my existing team. If I don't have a team, they're the ones that are there and making sure these things go out. Right? And then the flip side of that is also really honest reporting that helps people understand, because this is one of those funny things in SMS too. And this is true across the board. Attribution. We already kind of hit on attribution. Right? Like when I was at Common Thread, we started that data newsletter. And I remember working with our data scientist, our data engineer, to figure out how do we build a model that doesn't, when we try to calculate marketing efficiency ratio, total revenue divided by total spend, how do we make sure that total revenue is actual revenue and not what all the different platforms are reporting? We couldn't figure it out for a while, and it's because everybody's attributing it to. But what it takes is education. Like we've actually lost customers and then have them come back because they trialed a competitor that showed them better return. But there's a misunderstanding of what that meant. So oftentimes they'll use extended click windows, or even worse in SMS, view attribution, which doesn't exist. It's not a thing. If your platform, if your platform is telling you view attribution, you should be able to go in and turn it off. You should ask them to, or then you just got a hard default to Google Analytics last click, or something where you're getting a different source of truth. Because what it really means is we sent this to someone, and whatever window that's sent in, if that person buys anything in that window,
I did it.
Yeah. Because I didn't know this, you literally can't measure the opens of a text message. It's technologically impossible.
No, that's amazing. So is it like a pseudo managed service then? That sounds really white glove. That's brilliant. That's brilliant.
Well, it's brilliant, and we don't charge more for it, but it's a necessity in that because you're paying for it. If I can send the email for free, think I'm getting basically what I get out of it and hold it for the big drops, right? Because I'm paying for that next step. That's what I'm getting at. Yes, it's nice of us. Okay. Yes, it's nice of us. Cool. We don't charge you more for it. But it's also a necessity in that it takes effort to push that channel. Right. So it's a 2-for-1. We're not just good people, although we are good people. We're not just good people. We're also
you can be good people and have I think that's the difference between incentives and perks, right? Like this is just more of a perk where it's like this is part of your thing. You're not incentivized to do this, but it's awesome that not only do you guys get to make a bunch of money, but you also get to help people make a bunch of money. And so that's not your driving force, but it's just a perk. It's a secondary knock-on effect of the awesome system that you set up.
And the deeper someone lets us into their actual marketing life, their sales life, the better we can make that case and the better the retention is.
I was going to say.
I mean, it's so true across the board. Dude, right? Agency, any sort of SaaS, the more access you have, the more you can actually go in. Like, dude, BlendJet is one of our biggest customers. And we did a case study at the beginning of this year, and that thing culminates in a Google Analytics last click graph showing Q4 over Q4 2021 versus 2022. And that's like the crowning achievement so far. Like it's just this one image of we absolutely demolished their previous platform. And I can't even say out loud who it was. Not according to our own analytics. According to their UTM'd last click inside Google Analytics. That's the kind of money, the money stuff that I'm just like, that's so banger. And I hope it connects because that one just fires. But that's retention.
I love that. Yeah, that's amazing, man. I really think, I think that there's, I guess the reason I asked you the retention question is, I think some people think that is it it is a function of marketing. I think CS or CX, whatever, customer success, customer experience, should probably roll into marketing of some semblance. But I think product and CX are really on the hook for retention. I think marketing is really about getting people to the party, having people be really stoked about the party, knowing about the party, wanting to buy something at the party. And then that's kind of really not where your job ends, but like getting people hot and bothered into the party is essentially, for me, if you have touch lists, then you can start to take some responsibility of pushing touch lists through as well.
Yes.
But I just really, because sometimes when a lot of that stuff where we need more education and marketing, blah, 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 like I get it and it's helpful, but at the same time, like, then what are these other functions for? if marketing is doing all this, like, because I think that's the big difference between kind of what you guys have as a true customer success team, customer experience team, versus a customer support team, which is just purely transactional. Give me a refund. I want this. I want that. There's no relationship building in customer support.
And it's reactive. It's
reactive is such a great thing to put it there too. So I love that that's the way you're thinking of retention, because I think that's 1000% the path. And honestly, like that managed service is really clever. Like if you can make those economics work, that's sensational. That
I'll tell you the hardest part, and I haven't figured out how to crack this not yet from a marketing perspective. I think I got our differentiation nailed now. I know those 5 unique features.
Yep.
They really pop. They're in the right order. It's when people hit the fully managed service, because you immediately read it as whatever other fully managed customer success, customer support experience you've had before. And it's so hit and miss.
Yes.
So I still haven't been able to, it's like people want to believe.
Yep.
They want to believe that it is what it says it is. But it's crossing that bridge in the absence of being in the room and exposing them to someone who might run and manage their account for them. That's still a trick, because you're just dealing with so much baggage. Emotions, they're humans. They read it through the lens that and they also read it through the lens of your last worst experience. That's just the default.
Recency bias. It's a thing.
For sure.
Happens. What a brilliant way to look at things. Okay, let's wrap up the value add segment. We'll get into rapid fire. Last question. How do you see the next 2 to 3 years unfolding for e-commerce?
There's definitely a winnowing going on right now. That's going to
feels like it, right? Yeah.
Yeah. And people who can nail their unit economics and free cash flow, who can master one paid channel along with an organic flywheel, win. One paid channel, organic flywheel. And by organic flywheel, I don't just mean creating organic content on social or for SEO. I mean the packaging and how natural is it for someone to share your product? Does it lend itself in its presentation? The onboarding to the product is really important. My eyes have been open to this in a massive way, especially for anything that's consumable. How to use this thing right.
Yep.
And if you fumble that, if someone doesn't use it correctly, that's your fault. You didn't lead them into it in a great way. So there's still this winnowing. And yet the normalization of the giant spike we all experienced during lockdown is still up and to the right. It's just a matter of, can you get through this survival mode, period? So cut, efficiency. That's what it's about.
Man, that's beautifully put. Jeff Bezos has a great line. He put in one of his annual letters for Amazon where differentiation is survival. And I think that's very prudent right now, where like if you're growing at all right now, you're killing it. Like it's a really, really choppy macro environment out right now. There's a lot of macro headwinds. There's also a lot of, clutching of the pearls, if you will. And so you're seeing a little bit of this kind of just, it's especially if you're in certain verticals. Like if you're in luxury, you're pretty much immune to all this. But outside of like proper luxury, like everybody's like, even in our business, right? Like B2B SaaS, where it's like, people are looking at the line items like, hey man, how much value? And that's when you're really, if you get to this place, you don't want to get to this place, put it that way, where when people start doing the value to price equation, that's usually the death rattle, where it's like, it's almost done and it just hasn't happened yet. You see the cliff that you're driving off of. It's almost like kind of zombie revenue in that way, right? Like you have all these customers that are still paying you but aren't using the product, where it's like they're going to wake up one day and be like, hey, who's using this? And then there's 7 days like, let's cancel that. So I agree with those sentiments. I think there's still, to your point, I think people that nail operations, prioritize profit, and really get back to fundamentals, I think there's going to be big rewards for them. But I think the days of growth at all costs have probably passed us.
Yeah. I would say too, I think I would bet really hard on product assortment as being a more and more important lever to growth.
Yep.
Than it's ever been before. And it's hard. It's not, I mean, it's fraught with risk, but the ability to have something else to continue to sell to the people you've already acquired. And then that becomes a new channel. Like a product is a new channel of acquisition as well. It's not, and sometimes it's not even 50-50. It's like 25% upsell, 75% we finally got a new thing that overlaps with the orbit that we exist in. It sells to the same audience. Yeah. But the ability to differentiate or to improve your product mix. Yeah.
It's huge. Yeah, I call those cosmic events. Kind of like there's certain cosmic events that you can interact into your kind of universe or solar system, and then there's like supporting events like sales, things of that nature. But product launches are fantastic, and it's a really great, I've been playing around. Actually, I need to offline banter with you about this, and just playing around with like how I'm, because I'm back in this kind of ad seat again, getting back no accounts and stuff like that. And it's like, how would I map out a year? And then you can look at kind of their seasonality curves, do some things here, and then kind of that peak trough theory, right? Of like, okay, these are going to be the cosmic peaks of like, you have your holidays that you peak on, you have these things that you don't control, they're cyclical. And then a product launch is fantastic if you can do that, and then strategically use those product launches in the troughs so you can kind of raise that floor that you're normally hitting. Because to your point, it's not only a new acquisition channel, but if you do have some built up brand equity and the product is in the place of excitement, it usually you get a little bump there.
Yeah, because the single SKU or hero SKU DNVB, it's a harder and harder model given the thinner and thinner advertising margins that now exist. That's why I'm betting hard on those that can improve their product mix.
Totally with you. I think that, and then I'm also very bullish on, I think there's going to be a big pendulum swing with all this AI stuff to physical goods. I think it's going to get to a place of like having like a tangible physical thing feels like the rich people stuff. Like my big dystopian thing of like thesis is that all vacations for kind of like middle class and lower middle class go to like VR, where you go to the Maldives in your VR headset, but like the rich people will actually still be able to experience it like in person. But that's my dystopian thesis that I hope doesn't get true. Ready for some rapid fire?
Let's do it.
All right, here we go. TikTok, overrated, underrated?
Can it just be rated?
It can be accurately rated. Yeah.
It's accurately rated.
Accurately rated? I like it. Okay. Do you think it will be banned this year?
I don't think it will. I don't think it's going to get banned.
Okay. Love it.
I think there's too much money wrapped up in it. Yeah. I don't think it will. I don't think so.
Do you think it gets acquired?
No.
You don't think ByteDance spins it off and sells it to a U.S. entity?
No.
I love that. Pacific Northwest, overrated, underrated?
Underrated.
Let's go. It's beautiful up there. It's cold, but beautiful.
Cooler than Austin and SF. And even though most of everybody in Portland wants to be Canadian, I like being a Portlandian.
Yeah, Portland. Let's roll. Attending university, overrated, underrated?
Underrated.
Interesting. I like that.
I mean, listen, I taught, so I got to
fair play. You're part of the system. Yeah. Insider info here, people. ChatGPT, overrated, underrated?
Rated. It's rated. It's right where it needs to be. All of the hype around it, using it correctly, it's fabulous. It's absolutely fabulous. It's going to do nothing but get better.
I think, quick sidebar here, because me and you are both old. I think this is going to be the defining technology for the generation now. Like kind of for us, it was like the internet, and then in specific, like the Facebook newsfeed, like being able to advertise on that and like put $1 in and get like 6 out, like just a Cambrian event, right? Like just absolutely change the landscape of the world. I think if you reject the AI and the Chat GPT stuff, I think you're going to become a Luddite, and it's going to be the equivalent of us, somebody reading the Encyclopedia Britannica, which the kids probably don't get that reference, versus using the internet. Like
versus Wikipedia. It's the next. Yeah.
I think it's going to be something that should be embraced to whatever level. Without getting into crazy philosophical stuff, I think there's definitely some knock-on effects with how it impacts society, but that can be a whole nother talk for another day.
Absolutely deserving of all of the hype, and I have zero worried of it doing anything that replaces Aaron.
Yep, 100% with that.
I also do.
100%.
This is what I love about it. It never has been easier in the history of the world to make media or content.
Love it. But
no, you make good.
I think with that, there's going to be a commoditization. So to your point, I think there's going to be having that panache, or having that, it's almost like the Matrix, and the guy he gets on the motorcycle, like, oh my God, you're driving a gasoline car. It's like, oh my gosh, that was a human written article. I think there's going to be a scarcity for it. If you could collab with anyone at Recart, who would you do it with?
At Recart?
Yeah. You guys get a celebrity influencer or anybody you
want.
I
thought you meant like work with somebody inside the company.
No, like a collaboration of somebody like pimping out Recart. Who are you picking?
Oh man, there's some brands I really love to. Yeah, dude, I want the Ridge cosign.
Oh, come on, Sean Frank, let's do this. He's in Austin. I'm trying to get him on the pod.
And I talked to them.
He's one of the best operators out there.
That's the one where I'm like, we could, I want more marquee brands. That's really what it comes down to. People that put the stamp of trust and the belief on us. So that's the first one that comes to mind. Because
let's get those logos. Come on, Sean. We'll buy it. We'll buy another wallet.
My whole goal is too, because he did that great listicle where he rated all of his tech tools.
He's so good.
And he did like 2 out of 5 for their current SMS provider. And anyway, I was like, my whole goal this year is just to get a 3 out of 5.
Sean, if you're listening, get you on the Recart. Let's go. Let's slang some Ridge wallets here. Speaking of product mix, he did he's one of the best operators out there in my opinion. But his content to commerce play with buying Everyday Carry, I thought was just one of the most magnificent acquisitions ever. And then his ability to expand product lines, to your point of like, if you start to get pigeonholed with single SKUs, you get, and especially with Ridge wallets, because these are like indestructible things. Like, how many Ridge wallets are you really going to buy if you're a one wallet kind of person, et cetera, et cetera. So the way he addresses that, I think, is really brilliant.
Listen, man, I've ingratiated myself to that dude and the rest of that crew in every freaking way I know possible. Every special card I have to play. Go Google smartest guy in e-com. Smartest man in e-commerce.
You're pulling out all the stops for him. Oh, come on, Sean.
That's the whole reason for that. Let's just real talk.
Throw the man a fucking contract here, people. Favorite newsletter. What you got?
Marketing Profs by... oh my gosh. This will be the one part I ask you to edit. Why the hell Anne? She was so big in my career. I feel really embarrassed right now. Anne Handley.
Oh, jeez.
Dude. Marketing Profs by Anne Handley, her fortnightly, every 2 weeks newsletter is like a testament to good human writing, and it's delightful every time I get it.
Oh my gosh, I feel a little bit caught out. I didn't even know of her and or the newsletter, so I shall rectify this as soon as I log off. Favorite book?
Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel.
Oh, let's go, Danny K.
Or The Undoing Project.
I was just going to say,
which is what got me into...
Oh, you did it the other way.
I did
it's
Undoing
better.
Project.
It's Thinking Fast and Slow is better first, and then The Undoing Project, because you can see the spectacle of incredibleness that they built. So I went to school for economics, and that shows you how funny like economics is as a major, is that a psychologist won the Nobel Prize for economics, which is actually not an original Nobel Prize. They just added it on because all the economists are like, hey, we're really smart and we do all this fancy math. Why don't you give us a fun prize? But great picks.
My king nerd out moment was, this was back when I was writing for Mashable, and I cold emailed Daniel Kahneman at whatever college, university he was at, and he actually wrote me back, and we did like back and forth, and I got to quote him and stuff, original
What a
stuff.
G.
Yeah.
He gets it. Really, prospect theory, the whole thing is fantastic. Favorite meal and why?
Favorite meal? Costco orange chicken with some like really spicy hot sauce on it at like 7:30 or 8 o'clock at night when I'm in bed.
Simple man, simple pleasures. I love it. Favorite place travel to and why?
Rome,
Oh,
Palatine Hill.
what's Palatine Hill?
It's right behind the Colosseum. It's
in
basically
Italy.
old,
Yep.
in Rome behind the Colosseum, because basically you do the tour, you go through Colosseum over to Palatine Hill.
Yep.
In the early evening dusk when the sun is setting and it's lighting up the world with that golden hue. It was the most romantic time of my life with my wife when we went there. It's just, dude, I like curl
Memory
up with that
burn.
memory. Yeah, it was just beautiful.
Love it. Okay, last question and we'll wrap up. If you could have dinner with 3 people, dead or alive, fictional or non-fictional, who are you bringing? So there's a table for 4. You're sitting at the head of the table. Who's getting the 3 invites from Aaron?
Yeah. Okay. I'm actually going to go Daniel Kahneman.
Love.
That'd be insanely stimulating.
Love it.
I'm going to say Jesus.
JC, let's go.
I just want to find out, like...
Yeah. Seems like a great dude.
I'm more curious than I am in any sort of, like, esteem sense. I was going to be like, yeah, this is the historical human. Yeah. Let's talk. And I'd bring my dad. My dad
Let's go.
Dude, my dad is the best conversationalist, thinker, human I know.
Let's go. That's a great
And I'd be more curious just to see him interact with these folks and just get to meet him with my dad. And yeah, for sure.
Aaron, this was everything and more, man. You are just, you're my muse. You're just, it's even cooler, man, to know that you've gone through the darkness as well. I think there's a certain, badge of honor there where it's like, it's awesome. Cause I will bet on, instead of, and this sounds kind of counterintuitive, but like a perpetual winner versus, or I would bet not on the perpetual winner, but the person that has failed and then won, because there is a certain real learning in understanding failure isn't it. And I know so many talented people that can get really discombobulated if something doesn't go their way. And I think that's a really, sometimes a byproduct of being perpetually successful. And I think that candidly too, if you're always perpetually successful, you're not taking enough risk.
That's food to my soul these days.
Yeah,
I appreciate that, man. I mean that.
Okay. How do we get involved with Recart? How do people follow you? This time is yours, my friend.
Yo, go check out the new homepage. We just dropped it. It's popping. It's fresh. It's got the 5 differentiations that I am 99.87% sure are all actually true.
That's sick, baby.
Go check it out. If one of them isn't, holler at me in the DMs. I'm at Aaron Orendorff on Twitter. I'm super low-hanging fruit there. Same thing on LinkedIn. If you got questions about all of that, let me know. I am more than happy to not just get a layup, but actually have somebody meaningfully interact with a follow-up or a point of clarification or even disagree. Go find a mistake. I would be infinitely grateful and your friend forever.
I love that. You're on the Twitters?
Absolutely. At Aaron Orendorff. There's one of me. You know what? You know what you should just do? Dear listener, if you've made it this far, shut this podcast down. Go Google most handsome man in Oregon. Yes. That'll hook you up with everything you need to know about Aaron Orendorff. And then go Google smartest man in ecom and at whoever Google tells you those 2 people are, who knows? I don't know who those 2 people are. Let's leave it up to Google. Whoever Google tells you those 2 people are, go follow them on Twitter and at them with a link to one of those 2 articles. That would be hilarious if anyone goes and does this.
It's amazing. And go at Sean Frank that he needs to change to Recart. Dude, this was incredible, man. These podcasts are the reason why I really enjoy doing the podcast. Like, your journey is so inspirational and what you've been able to accomplish and the way you think in terms of frameworks, formulas, but you also have the empathetic understanding that there's humans behind these numbers. I think is such a rare quality. Like, I've met really incredible quants, but they have no idea that like leads are leads, right? Goes lead, MQL, SQL, closed deal, one loss, like, and there's a definitely a time and place for that, but the empathy and the precision that you bring to the way you think of marketing, and then especially at Recart, has just been really cool to see you blossom. Man, you're the man. I really, really appreciate you taking the time.
Feelings could not be more mutual.
The bromance is officially unionized. Oh yeah, can you marry people?
Not technically anymore.
Not technically. Okay, but you used to be able to.
Yes, and I've done it.
Oh, look at that. You officiate it. Well, we'll have the DTC universe officiate over this union. So consider us married. If you want to get more involved with Triple Whale, we are triplewhale.com. Go get some of the best analytics, attribution, all the stuff. See how you can make more monies on the Shopify. It's triplewhale.com. And then we have a fantastic newsletter that goes out every Tuesday, Thursday called Whale Mail. You can subscribe right at triplewhale.com/whalemail. Aaron, you're the man. I really, really appreciate it, dude. Thank you so much. Go check out Aaron. He's the man. Go check out Recart if you need some awesome SMS. This white glove service is really interesting. I think that's something that you guys are going to see a lot of success with. It alleviates a lot of the education issues, onboarding, etc. It just changes the relationship. I love that you guys are thinking through that. That's brilliant. All right, folks, make sure to go subscribe. If you want to see our pretty faces, we publish these on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/triplewhale. And then we're on all of your favorite podcast catchers. And then we also have a really fun sister show called Ad Spend that is pretty much a little bit more tactical, really getting into the weeds. So go check that out there. We co-host it with Ashvin Malwani. So amazing, dude. I think I made it through all the plugs. You're the man. We'll talk soon. That's another ROAS in the books, folks. See ya.